In today's episode of the podcast, we are thinking about those things that you are passionate about, those desires that you have. And as ever, I am your host, Elle Edwards, founder of the Faith and Business Playground. I'm here with coaching, training, and this podcast to help you embrace your inner weirdo, to help you be Youier, so you can make Jesus CEO of your life and business. This week, we are thinking about Youier goal setting, and next week, we're going to be doing Reclaim Your Year live. So we're going to be getting really specific and helping you set goals that you actually want to get done. So if that sounds like something you would benefit from, and if you're not already signed up, go to faithandbusinessplayground.com/reclaim. In the meantime, though, today, the verse I have for you is actually from Philippians. It's Philippians chapter 2, verse 13. And it says, "It is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose." Now, this ties in with something that we talked about towards the end of yesterday's episode. And I've also talked about this, I know, I think it was last week, possibly the week before. No, I want to say last week. This idea of niggles. Now, this has definitely been my experience where I've had something niggling at me, an idea that I feel like is from God. And then I push at it and I give it a little go. And historically, more than once, I've given up and put it back on the shelf and gone, no, it's not for me. And I won't know this side of heaven, at least, whether that was because God was going, no, it's not the right time yet, or whether I gave up too soon. Either could be true or could be a combination of both. Who knows apart from God? But it doesn't matter, because what's quite cool about it is it gives me the opportunity to share this with you. And from people I've spoken to, I know that I'm not the only person who this happens to. Those niggles, those things that you're passionate about, those things that you feel called to do. And you, for whatever reason, they get put to one side for a time. I've long maintained that those things that are important, if they are part of you being you and what God has in mind for you, those niggles will come back. And that's definitely been my experience. I've talked before about it being like a bit like a spiral, and you go around this spiral and it can sometimes feel like you're going around in circles. But instead of going around in circles, what if you were going around in a spiral? And every time you do a loop around the spiral, it's tightening the vision and getting clearer and clearer until finally at some point you are ready and you step into that space. That's definitely been my experience. I feel the work I am doing right now is as a result of the journey I've been on over the last 9 years, and probably longer really as a person. But in terms of, running my own business, the last 9 years. And so how that ties in with the verse I've just read to you is that there's lots of other verses in the Bible where it talks about God giving you the desires of your heart. Now, that's not talking about, I really, really, really desire a brand new, huge television, for example. Or I really want some chocolate cake. There's nothing wrong with having a big telly, and there's nothing wrong with chocolate cake. But those aren't the kind of desires we're talking about. We're also not talking about desires as in like desires for another human being, like sexual desires, because we're called, I believe, to be in relationship with one person. But there's lots of attractive people out there in the world. And just because somebody might catch your eye who's a little bit attractive doesn't mean that you have to follow that desire. The Bible isn't saying that every single person who you find a bit attractive, that God's going to give you that person. So there is this danger that we can read stuff in the Bible and then take it to what isn't God's intent behind that. So what I really mean by desires are those niggles, those things that you're passionate about, the gifts that you have, the strengths that you have, the things that come easily to you, the things that you do naturally, whether they are, spiritual gifts or whether they are God-given talents. All of that stuff plays together to make you the person that you are and allows you to show up and do the work that God has for you. And so as we think about Youier goal setting, we do keep in mind and keep an eye to those things that excite us. So I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head. Okay, if can't even think of anything. Okay, I can give you an example. I don't feel for one moment that it is my God-given gift to do cooking. Now, I can cook to a point, but I get distracted and I don't particularly enjoy it. I like eating. Eating's great, yummy, but I don't particularly enjoy cooking. By contrast, my mum is brilliant at cooking, whereas I would happily tinker with a bit of tech. Like I'll play with behind the scenes on a website, or I'll, I don't know, find some new way. Like when I set up the podcast via Alexa, and I'm saying her name quietly so she doesn't wake up and start shouting at us. But those sort of tinkering with tech things behind the scenes, I get really excited about that stuff. I find it really fun. My mum, by contrast, she now uses Facebook Messenger to send us messages, and she likes to play solitaire, but that's about as far as her tech goes. But she's brilliant at baking and cooking. Her business is, she's got a catering business, and her bread rolls, they're amazing. And so her downtime, her way of relaxing is to make bread. Where you might read a book, she likes to read as well, but she likes to make bread. And so if it would be completely like left of field for me to suggest that suddenly God's plan for me is to suddenly start baking bread, that's as crazy as thinking that tomorrow my mum's role is to build a website. I do believe that all of this stuff that we get excited about, and yes, there's an element of practice as well. We get better and more skilled the more we use these skills, but it starts with something that you're interested with. And so that's what I want to remind you in today's episode, is if part of you is a bit scared or a bit reluctant to set goals because you're afraid of the person that God might make you be as a result, just want to encourage you that you are you, and God knows you. He knows your heart. And I do firmly believe that these things that we are interested in, and those things that light us up, God put those desires there, and he can use them and wants to use them to make your life more delightful, but also to further the kingdom and make the wider world more delightful, which, ties back into yesterday, of course. So that's just my encouragement for you. And that reminder, those things that niggle at you, those desires, those things that excite you are God-given. And we will be exploring next week how you can take those things you're passionate about and build goals that you actually are excited about and want to get done. So that reminds me, quite neatly, if you're not signed up, faithandbusinessplayground.com/reclaim, where you can play with Reclaim Your Year Live. I shall be back tomorrow, where we're going to be thinking about seasons. And your little piece of homework, if you want to play along, is see if you can guess what Bible verse I have for you tomorrow. It's quite easy. The clue is seasons. I shall be back tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.